Rory Mcilroy is one of the prettiest swings in the game of golf. Now we've got a slightly different camera angle here that will really show some of the unique aspects of Rory's swing that allow him to absolutely bomb the golf ball, and you might even pick up a few tips that will help you hit the golf ball even further. So on the left we've got this over the head view, and then on the right we've got this slightly off center but down the line view. So let's look at Rory's posture. Rory's really got impeccable posture, and you'll see that with a lot of great players. He's maintained this neutral sort of spine, and then he's got a little bit of knee bend. Those arms are hanging beautifully just outside the shoulders. You can see from this overhead view how he's got a little bit of foot flare that just helps facilitate his hip turn. He's got it. I know it's just taken a little bit back from setup, but you can see how he's got a little bit of tilt in his spine to promote that upward angle of attack that Rory does. So if we look from down the line, you'll notice this little trigger move whereby that left knee works back subtly as he then moves the club head back. Can you see that? A little bit of a trigger move there, a little bit of head tilt as well. I love seeing these little intricate trigger moves because it really helps to see how these players are very dynamic and load the tissues to allow him to create speed. So if we take him a little bit further back, you'll see how much that left knee works back now. Then as that left knee works back, he then rotates that right pocket back ever so slightly. The hands move, you can see how that knee slightly now moving back as well, that right knee, to facilitate quite a decent amount of hip turn. Rory's got a decent amount of hip turn for a tall player, probably a little bit more than average. You'll see here, look how he's got plenty of width in that right arm. Too many people focus on the left arm for width, but focus really on that right arm because most right-handed golfers are right-handed. You can see how that club head is outside his hands. Rory's issue sometimes is he gets that club shaft a little bit behind him in takeaway. Let's have a look on this overhead view. So we will see how his weight shifts a little bit to that right leg. Can you see that little shift? Look at the belt loop there, and look how it moves slightly to the right hand side. And then you'll see how that right hip pocket starts to work back as he works into takeaway here. And then watch that width there. Loads of width in that takeaway. You can see how that right pocket's moved back. You can see how that torso's moved. Just loads of athleticism in that move. So let's bring him a couple more frames back. You can see how that pocket is working back a little bit further. You can see how much rotation. Look at the stretch on his polo shirt there. You can see how much coil he is creating. And then on this down the line view, you'll see again, everything's turning very, very simple. Look at that width. You can see this if I bring him to a similar position. You can see how wide those arms are. There's not a whole lot of bend in that right arm. There's not a huge amount of separation. Rory trains often, you might see, with like a ball in between his arms. It's a really useful way to keep that width. He's used a variety of products, but you will see him. There's a few videos on my YouTube channel of Rory practicing with that ball in between his arms. So we'll clear him up. You'll see, look how much he's rotating through that hip and through that torso as he works back. We'll keep moving him. Look at that width in that right arm there. Loads and loads of width. And then let's bring him up here to a similar position in his golf swing. Now what you'll see is why Rory practices with that ball in between his arms is watch how there it's pretty much in the center of the arms, and then can you see how he just widens that gap between his arms as he gets to the top. Just watch how that right elbow starts to work out behind him. So Rory really works on that structure of that right arm because it can get a little bit behind him at the top of the swing, which you can see really well from this overhead view. But you often see guys who, can you just see that now it just starts to work out behind him. But you'll often see that in players that have a lot of rotation through the thorax. You can see, look at that tremendous amount of rotation there. Look how the arms still are coming across his body. So he's got lots and lots of rotation through the thorax, which then you can see, unless you've got a tremendous amount of flexibility in that trail arm, you normally see that trail arm just to start to wander off a little bit. You can see it there, how that arm just wanders off behind him. But you just see that with guys that have got a lot of rotation generally, but then that can cause issues for Rory where he drops it in behind him. So let's just talk a little bit about this dynamic move now. So as you can see, Rory's coming to the top of his swing, and then you can kind of see from his head movement is look how much he then lowers so quickly. A huge amount of lowering. Look at the pelvis, boom. Just really lowers and squats into the ground. You can see how much angle he regains in that downswing. It's just tremendous amount of vertical force. Now what happens is, if we see it from more this overhead view, what you'll really notice is, watch how his pelvis and specifically the foot and lead knee work. So watch how the club's still working back, and can you look at that? So what's happening here is he's still working in backswing, but can you see how that heel's coming off the ground? So a lot of people talk about this lead heel and it coming off the ground in backswing to facilitate more speed. But what Rory's actually doing here is this move here. Now you can see that heel coming off the ground. What he's doing is he's putting a tremendous amount of force into that lead toe. Now that lead toe, the ligaments connect all the way up through the ankle, and it provides that pushing power. Now, if you don't believe me, try jumping on the spot with your toes up in your shoes. You won't jump very high. So what he's doing is, at this motion, he's applying a tremendous amount of force into that lead toe, which creates this movement here. And you can see how athletic that movement. Look at that pelvis. Look how it starts to rotate so early. Look at that amount of rotation, and the club head's hardly on the way down. So what's happening here is, like I say, he's leading into that big toe. His lead knee starts to work back, then the lead hip starts to work back, and then he's getting all these tiny micro stretches through all these muscles, so through the hip, through the torso, through the core, through the lead shoulder. And because he's doing that, it then adds some of that stretch to the wrist, and it creates all these little micro stretches throughout his body that allows him to create so much speed. So he's just turning on all these triggers to create a lot of speed. That's why he's so long, even though he's not the biggest guy in the world. So you can really see that movement there. Look, the club's hardly moved down. That's the real power key to Rory's swing. It's not anything he does in backswing, it's this transition movement there. Look, the club's just stationary at the top there, but you can see how much he's applying force into that lead toe. Look as well, look what happens with the foot here. Watch how it kind of spin. Can you see that little spin there? Because what he's doing is he's really loading into this lead glute, this glute medius, to facilitate that amount of rotation. Now, if we zoom out here, you'll just see, look, that's incredible. Look how much rotation he's got through his hips, and he's hardly started the downswing. If I bring him into the same position, you can see it there, that regain of that knee flex. And it's just so much stretch he's creating. And you'll also notice this is where Rory creates some issues, because that arm gets out behind him, and then he creates this shallowing move. Is that club shaft and those arms get so far behind him in transition. So not a lot of players can play from this position, just because they'd end up blocking it or really flipping it and then hooking it. But you can see Rory, what we'll see more in Rory's downswing later on, is how much rotation he has through the body, which is a kind of matchup that allows him to drop the club head behind him or the hands behind him. Now, I think as Rory gets older, he might struggle a little bit as he loses that speed in his body. So let's bring him down, and you can see, look how much those hips have turned. Look at that chest. It's way pointing over here, whereas his hips are pointing at the ball. And you can see that from down the line. Look how you can still see the Nike logo, but we can't see his belt buckle. So we'll bring him down a little bit further, and look how quickly he's planted that heel as well. That provides, it's just that athleticism, I can say it, that provides a ton of speed. Don't try this at home, by the way. So we'll bring him down, and you can see gets into this delivery position. You can see how much that right foot is off the ground. As he starts to drive, you can see, look at the level of the pelvis. I mean, look from the top, it's then dropping, and then it drop. And then just pre-delivery position, you'll start to see how that pelvis works upwards. It's a tremendous amount of speed there, but what you'll also see from Rory is that rotation. So he's getting a lot of vertical force, but he's also getting a lot of rotational force there, which you can see in this dynamic motion of how much those hips start to move up as he's pushing down, then boom, up, and then releases all that energy into the club. Now you'll really see it from this overhead view, down, then starts to see how much that pelvis starts to elevate there. You can see how much it's jumping up in the air. And what you'll see as well is if we just put some traditional line on the hip, is it up here that Rory sort of, he's tidied that up a lot actually, because I've done some videos in the past where you'll actually see Rory early extending a little bit with driver, but you can see there he's keeping that butt on the line beautifully, which would explain why he's played so much better. I know he's not won as much, but in 2024 he's been consistently challenging, a lot of second place finishes, whereas you'd see there's some analysis on my channel where Rory does early extend a lot, so he's really keeping better into posture, which will allow him to get those hands more in front of his body on the way. Like I say, Rory's issue is at the pass, because he drives so much with that lower body, drives forward, and those hands really get dropped behind him, and then he gets stuck on it, so he'll have to flip it, or he can get some blocks. Whereas you can see he's staying way better in his posture now, so I'm mega impressed with Rory there. That was just a little side note, but you can see here, watch from this position, watch how much that right hip's driving forward. You can see that amount of rotation through the hips at impact. Again, don't try this at home. You can see how much those shoulders are open. You'd see a lot more, like an Adam Scott, his shoulders would be more in this position from a visual perspective at impact, whereas Rory is so open through that chest, and he has to be with that move that he drops it slightly under there. He has to have that rotation as a matchup, but he's done really well here to change a lot of his swing. So you'll see, look at that extension through the ball, keeps his head down. Look how close those arms are, those forearms. Most amateurs have a big gap here, whereas Rory, you can see, look how much he extends through the ball. And I just want you to take a notice, you can really see it from down the line. Look how much that pelvis is driven up after the ball. It's a tremendous amount of vertical force that's going on from Rory. You can see here is that athleticism through the ball. Look at that spine angle there. That takes a tremendous amount of athleticism and gym work to maintain that posture through. You'll also see is, look how much he releases the club there. Look at that right hand, how much it is turning. So he hits it there, and then just watch that right hand. Watch how it starts to rotate over. There's no hanging on to that. And you can see how straight his arms go and how much he releases it. Very, very impressive there. And then those hands exit through that left shoulder, and then this is my favourite part of Rory's swings. Look at that athleticism. How he can swing at 125 mile an hour and maintain that posture at the finish is just absolutely beautiful. So the keys are with Rory's swing, this overhead angle, you can see how much athleticism he creates through that lead big toe, and also from down the line we can see how much he's improved that early extension from earlier in like 2023. So he's definitely improved that, and that's led to a lot more consistent finishes in 2024. I'm excited for Rory in 2025, see if he can get that elusive major win that's been eluding him for so long. Lovely swing, you can just watch this over and over, but you can see, especially from this over the head view, that unique aspect of Rory's swing. Wouldn't copy it, but it's a beautiful thing to watch.